Tom.
And we are Velocities in Music via IMTV. Today, guys, we're going to review Baroness's second album.
Yes.
Yes, Blue Record. And actually, this is supposed to go with their first album. It's supposed to be kind of a pair to their first album, Red Record, which I think is kind of a cool concept, yeah. Red Album. And I think that's kind of a cool concept to have any time you can relate your work together, because it's kind of a sales thing. I don't want to go that far, but I do think that it gives the listener or the fan another method of really getting into a band and getting a band's work. Now, this record is, Baroness is a very heavy band. They're metal, and they've been noted for all the different styles of metal that they can pull off. Now, one thing we're going to just throw out as a general disclaimer, we do this often when we review anything heavy, is that a lot of metalheads like to get very genre specific and get very snotty about what genre or subgenre said band's sound belongs to.
Post-hardcore speed metal.
Oh my god, I just don't care. I just don't care. If you want to spend all that time figuring out what subgenre this little sound or this band falls into, fine. I don't want to put stuff into boxes, because there's going to be artists out there like Baroness who go all over the place, who can dip and dive into whatever style they want, execute it at a high level, and kick ass all the way through, and that's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear something that's just stuck in one style, so I don't dig into it. So if I offend anybody, or we offend anybody by not identifying the specific subgenre or not saying what goes along with your square little box mind and having to put everything into boxes, I'm sorry. But we would encourage you to start thinking outside of those little boxes and see that a lot more goes into this than just one subgenre of metal music. This is heavy music, it's metal, screaming, you gotta love it, you gotta just love the raw, visceral intensity, that's what it's all about. I used to hate metal, this guy got me into it through VIMTV. Blue Record. Great instrumentation. This thing's themed like an album, and really that's what I was just talking to Tom about, is how metal music just in general typically lends itself to a lot of the things that I'm looking for in an album. You got a highly original sound, maybe not quite as original as it possibly could be. They could have taken it a step farther, but still pretty darn good. Great songwriting, great song structuring. You don't have that any sort of formula there. Great instrumentation, a lot of concept and theming. That typically is a good indication I'm gonna like it. Tom, what'd you think?
Well, you know, you already kind of touched on this calling from a lot of influences. And it's interesting because not only, you know, between songs, but even within one song, you do get a lot of that.
Absolutely.
And people have pointed out before us that this even calls on some indie stuff. And I mean, even like the couple ballad points in here makes you think of, you know, while this has a very modern prog metal sound, you know, like to maybe Mastodon is probably the closest I could think of. Still not exactly similar, obviously. But, you know, when they go to like ballads and do acoustic stuff, it makes me think of something like Kansas would do. Right. You know, so they know their prog roots. Right. And that's really appreciated. But also, the big thing for me here was production. Whereas, you know, you do listen to something like Mastodon, and I'm not going to be comparing it to that all the time. It's just that this happens to be a good foil for what I'm going to say. Mastodon's production, at least in their newer couple of albums that I've heard, I don't think it was quite this way with, like, Leviathan and whatnot. But very, very sharp. Very crisp. Everything's very well defined. Here, you get a lot more just kind of meshed together. And sometimes I think it works and sometimes it doesn't.
I completely agree.
In times when things are really thick and big, it's good that things are blending together. It's really good for that reason because you get that full low-end sound. Now, at times where it doesn't work as much, I find, is when you have a lead guitar line that usually when the rhythm guitar here is very low-end and mid-range and doesn't have a lot of that high-end crunch. And then all of a sudden you'll have a lead guitar line that's like, BAM! Here it is! And it just overrules everything in the mix. When you hear one of those lead guitar parts, you barely hear the drums, you barely hear what the rhythm guitars are doing. I think it's a little over the top for my taste. That kind of bothered me at times. Now, it's not like that all the time. It's only select moments, but it's still something that I picked up on multiple times.
What do you think of the vocals?
The vocals, they were tough. I didn't like them at first. They grew on me a little bit. I mean, they remind me sometimes actually of Harvey Milk.
Yeah, I agree.
Honestly, from that shouting. But there's always this, like, dual layered, they double track it, and for those long shouts that are held out, he even harmonizes. Which you don't think about harmonizing with shouting, but he proves that there are notes and melody under there by the way he's able to harmonize with himself. And a lot of that actually, and back to the production, made me, maybe you think I'm crazy, but made me think of Metallica's second album, Ride the Lightning, because that's another album that really just all kind of blends together, and sometimes that bothers me and sometimes it doesn't, and that's why that's not one of my more favorite Metallica albums, but that's another story. But here, like you said, works from beginning to end as a good album. I think it's great that near the end of the album they show even more variety.
Right.
It comes out a lot at the end, and it makes it so that this album isn't really front or back heavy.
Right.
It's just they have different qualities.
Straight through listening.
Exactly.
Yep.
The first half, I feel like, has a lot more of your regular kind of metal structured. A lot of, that's kind of an oxymoron because a lot of metal albums don't have a lot of structure, and that's what's great about them. But a lot more of your classic stuff,
right.
Your hard-hitting songs, you got the ballad in there, and then by the end, they are doing a lot more with switching back and forth, even more so than they did in the first half.
Yeah, and to continue what you were saying about the vocals, the only thing I wanted to add to it is I actually think that they did a really good job as far as writing the vocal parts, because they a lot of times in the scream, anytime I hear metal music or heavy music that's where I hear the vocalist is screaming at me, I was always turned off before I really got into metal music, and the reason why is because I never had heard an artist really do it well. I think that Baroness actually does a pretty good job. At times I think that the vocals need a little work, maybe doesn't add to the sound, but overall I think that they actually do a good job, especially when you consider how they wrote it. And the thing about the vocals here is that you only hear the vocals at very focused and specific points.
Yeah.
They are not scared to not have vocals. We just reviewed Rush's Moving Pictures,
Yeah.
a classic heavy band, and I talked about one of the critiques I had, the only critique I had of that album, was that Geddy Lee's vocals are just everywhere, and they cover up, they mesh with some of the don't mesh with some of the complicated instrumentals. Here, I don't feel like that mistake was made, if that is a mistake, or however how minor you want to make that mistake. I don't feel like they do that. I feel like the vocals are only where they wanted to have the vocals, where they thought that the vocals needed to be. That's something I respect about it.
Yeah.
One other minor criticism I do have about Blue Record is that I feel like every album needs to define itself. And what I look for is it needs to tell, a sound of an album needs to tell you what it is, why it is, and where it wants to take you and deliver you. I feel like this tells you what it is and takes you where it wants you to go, but it never really tells you why. You have all this crazy stuff going on. This guy's screaming at you. The music is crazy and intense. But after scouring the internet, after researching the band and listening to this album a good number of times, I really can't tell you what it's about. I really have no idea. I'm hoping some of you mega fans, that 1% of the music listening population out there who love Baroness so much that they know everything about him, can tell us. So please do that. I'm sorry I don't know. I really did try and research to figure out what this is about, because I thought that there might be a concept driving it, since it's so well structured and albumized. That's something that I just felt like they could have done a better job projecting. But overall, I really like this album. I'm going to come back to it a lot. 85.
I'm going 83.
Great. As I said before, if you guys know what the lyrics are about, please tell us. I'm really interested. And also, what do you think about this record? Do you prefer blue or red? And where do you think this band's going to go next? Tell us at www.velocitiesinmusic.com, youtube.com/velocitiesinmusic. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. That's where we get a lot of our talking going on, and where you can vote for albums like Baroness and all of our throwback reviews that we do. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.